Now this game caught me by surprise when I first found out about it for a lot of reasons. Today's ancient DOS game, OverKill, is not just the only graphical game released by Epic Mega Games not to support 256 color graphics, but it's also the first game they released to have a MIDI-based soundtrack, utilizing Roland sound systems such as the MT32. Though lacking any decent way to record MIDI from my computer, I had to resort to the ad-lib soundtrack, which is still good enough, really. To put it simply though, OverKill is a 2D shooter that borrows elements from both Gradius and R-Type, the result being a fairly short but satisfying experience, so let's cut to the chase and get to the game stats. OverKill was developed by Tech-Noir and published by Epic Mega Games in 1992. It's a one-player 2D shooter with support for CGA 4-color, Tandy 16-color, and EGA 16-color graphics, all at 320x200 resolution. The Tandy and EGA modes are identical, but in DosBox it's simpler to just use the EGA mode. Now, although the box for this game touted Sound Blaster support, it actually only supports the PC speaker for sound effects, while supporting the ad-lib and Roland MT32 for music. As for its current release date, the game's author released it under a freeware license back in July of 2008, and as such, the full version can now be downloaded from a variety of places, including the old standby I tend to recommend, the RGB Classics website at www.classicdosgames.com. The story for this game is pretty basic. After a long space journey, you return to your home planet to find it completely taken over by a hostile alien race that kills people for pleasure. As you are the last surviving member of your species, you figure a little vengeance is in order and decide to just blast the heck out of all these aliens that are in your way, helping to protect other various planets along the way. I should point out that despite the fact the entirety of your race is now dead, there's somehow this mothership you dock with at the end of every mission that restores your fuel and shields and everything. So, is it just automated, run by a friend, sent by the multiverse overlords to protect you or something? Well, the story, as basic as it is, really doesn't seem to fit the atmosphere of the game itself. The box also touted the story as being an essential part of the game. I swear, the box for this game was lie-tastic. As for the gameplay itself, I don't really have too much to say about it, so let's just cover the basics. When you start a new game, you're allowed to choose which planet to start from out of the 6 you normally go through. Edrax, Gallifrey, Hoth, yes, the same Hoth as from Star Wars, Voltaire, Pax Verde, and the unknown planet where the hostile alien race is believed to come from. You also have 3 choices of skill levels: easier, normal, and holy cow. The skill selection actually doesn't have much of an effect. The higher the skill level is, the more shots the enemies take and the more damage you take when you get shot or run into solid objects, though collisions with the enemies always does a full layer of shield damage. Each mission is composed of an approach to the planet's outer defenses, then a run through the outer defenses, then finally a sort of challenge section as you escape from the planetary system to link back up with your mothership. During the approach, all of your additional weapon systems and power-ups are offline, leaving you to fend for yourself with just your standard single shot. As you progress through each mission, you'll obtain a variety of power-ups that restore shield layers, restore fuel, destroy all the enemies on the screen, and then there's the weapon power-ups. Weapon power-ups in this game work just like they do in Gradius. When you pick one up, a selector moves down a power-up bar. When the power-up you want is highlighted, you press a button to activate it. Unlike Gradius though, there's only 4 segments on the power-up bar here, and each one can be activated multiple times. The first selector is for changing your primary weapon, which there's several of. Beyond your single shot, you can also activate a double shot which does twice as much damage, a diagonal shot which fires one shot forwards and another at an angle depending on the direction you're moving in, the screw laser which is very slow moving but passes straight through everything, the fast laser which is much faster than the screw laser but gets blocked by solid walls, and then finally the ring laser, which rapidly expands as it travels forwards and destroys everything in its path, but gets interrupted by walls and can only be fired by your main ship. More on that in a moment. The second selector is for acquiring your standard contour missiles, which fire towards the sides and travel along flat surfaces, but it's also for acquiring yo-yo missiles. And these special missiles lock onto targets, hit them, then return back to your ship. If there's more targets to hit, the missile immediately bounces back out to hit that target, otherwise the missile is lost. And when you activate the yo-yo missiles, you only get a few of them, and so long as you're under constant attack, you should be able to keep them going for a while. This is why you'll sometimes see the selector for yo-yo missiles ready to activate even though it seems like you still have them, and also why it'll sometimes seem like you only get to keep them for a few seconds, while other times they can last for several minutes. The third selector is for activating special gadgets to attach to your ship. The fire nose is highly essential as it helps protect the front of your ship from damage and fires 3 shots forwards that can pass straight through enemy targets. You can also acquire a set of sidearms that protect your sides and shoot additional shots of your main weapon, so long as your main weapon is not the ring laser. You can get a second set of sidearms too, but first you have to upgrade to a fighter by activating the 4th selector. And once you've upgraded one step further to a cruiser, you can also obtain up to 2 drone gadgets, which follow you around and shoot even more shots of your main weapon, just like the options in Gradius. Now there's a couple approaches you can take to playing this game, and it really depends on whether or not you want to use the ring laser. You can obtain a ring laser without any of the other power-ups, and since none of the gadgets can fire additional ring laser shots, it's usually best to stick with your original craft if you intend to use the ring laser. If you're going to go the all-out approach with fast lasers though, that's when you should get the upgrades and all those extra gadgets. Oddly enough, the ring laser approach is actually easier for one very peculiar reason: fuel. This is one of the very few 2D shooters where you have to worry about fuel levels. Fuel in this game is a function of time and the kind of ship you're flying. The more upgraded your ship is, the more fuel it consumes, meaning you have to destroy more enemies and make sure to pick up fuel power-ups if you want to survive. In fact, the second planet, Gallifrey, is virtually impossible to complete if you're flying the cruiser because there's simply not enough fuel power-ups in the later parts of the level to keep you going. And if you run out of fuel, it is game over no matter how many lives you have left in reserve. So if you're about to run out of fuel, just get yourself killed as quickly as possible. Otherwise, instead of just losing a life, you're going to lose the entire game. The last thing I want to make note of are the shields. The shields in this game take a little getting used to. Your shield system consists of 3 shield layers and integrity levels. As a shield layer takes damage, its integrity drops. If it runs out of integrity, the layer is lost and the underlying layer now takes over. Essentially, you can drain the shield bar to nothing 3 times without getting killed, but this will completely destroy your shields, meaning if you run out of integrity a 4th time, it'll completely destroy the ship. While most of the enemy shots do only minimal shield damage, direct contact with an enemy will completely drain one layer of your shields. So whatever you do, if you have to choose between getting shot several times or colliding with an enemy, get shot several times, because overall, you're going to take less damage. Don't really have much else to say about the game, though I will note that if you beat the game, you get a single page of text saying you didn't actually win, and to give it another go from the start. No matter how many times you beat the game, it's always the same message and it's always the same run each time. So really, the only reason you'd want to play it over and over and over again is to try for a high score. So yeah, that's OverKill. It's a very basic 2D shooter, and it's pretty short as far as 2D shooters are concerned, but it's not bad, and certainly worth a play at least once, especially now that it's freeware. But if you're not into 2D shooters, then this game isn't going to be anything special. DosBox settings are a little interesting. Despite the age of this game, you'll want to set the cycles count to max. Auto will cause slowdowns and unresponsive controls, while fixed settings cause hiccups in the game speed for some peculiar reason. I also highly recommend playing this game with a gamepad or arcade stick, and this is also one of the few games that really benefits from DosBox's auto-fire setting in the joystick section. This game is one of those cruel ones where you have to press the fire button once for every single shot you want to make. So the joystick auto-fire setting really helps make the game more approachable and keeps your fingers from going needlessly numb. But if you're a masochist and like mashing buttons repeatedly for almost half an hour straight, then by all means, leave the auto-fire off. Lastly, the game automatically detects and utilizes MIDI support in DosBox, which may or may not sound so good depending on your hardware. If you want to force the game to use its ad-lib music instead, just use the /A command line parameter when starting the game. Just don't be surprised when you notice the ad-lib music is several times louder than the PC speaker sounds. But as you may have noticed, since the PC speaker sounds are not that good, I didn't bother changing the volume balance between them. If you want to though, just use DosBox's mixer command to change the volume and you should be good. Anywho, that's all for this episode of Ancient DOS Games. Next time on episode 63, I'm going to be covering a game which, much to my surprise, no one has requested yet. And all I really got to say about it for now are 4 words. I am Death Incarnate. Think you know which game that applies to, then send your guess to ADG@pixelships.com and tune in next Saturday to see it in action.